Alright guys, so welcome to the house. This house is actually located in Arizona. I invested $18,500 into real estate exactly 1 year ago, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how much money this $18,000 turned into, my experience investing this money, all the nightmares that happened, and how much I'm profiting off this every single month. So we're gonna be getting into that in today's video. If you do enjoy it, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. So first off, I released a video about this property roughly a year ago where I gave you a whole tour of the house and my plans to rent this out fully furnished. Let's take a tour of the house. This house is actually located in Arizona. I'm currently living here right now. My plan was to turn it into an Airbnb. I had mentioned that we put it up on Zillow, and basically within the first day, we had a good tenant, or so I thought so, a good tenant. Anyways, we're gonna be getting into that story a little bit down the line, but first off, I wanna talk about the immediate numbers of buying this property, because I think a lot of newbies are gonna ask, how did you get into real estate with a relatively low amount? Because $18,000 is really not that much to buy a house, especially when you learn the numbers that I'm profiting off renting this out.
From Espanol, real estate is real. Royal estate. That's why the rich invest in real estate.
You'll potentially realize why a lot of these real estate gurus talk about how lucrative this can be. So first off, I ended up purchasing this property at an absolutely amazing time and ended up securing it for $350,000. Now, the reason why I say it was an amazing time is because the very same house today, my house on Zillow's estimate, says over $530,000. So right off the bat, there's almost $180,000 in appreciation since I bought this. Now, obviously that isn't a normal amount of appreciation. We've had dramatic inflation and a housing market boom, which has been the catalyst. But nonetheless, the reason why I do say amazing time also is because I managed to secure an interest rate of just 2.7%. So the numbers that I got in on this property were at a really good time. So averaged out, my mortgage on this property is just $1,900 per month. And that does include mortgage insurance because I don't have 20% into the property yet, because I decided it would be a more advantageous situation for me to only put 5% down on this property, which equated to about $18,000. And instead of investing that 15% and putting into the property, I could use that money to actually profit for me, since I do run a business, and putting that into my own business yields me a higher return. So it's going to be different for everyone on how much they want to put down and what's going to be reasonable for them. But in my scenario, and I think a lot of other people's scenario, being able to purchase a property with 5% down is definitely a very powerful thing, especially from a cash on cash investment return. And you'll see that right now when I break down these numbers. So originally I purchased this house for $350,000 and my mortgage is around $1,900 per month. So when we brought our first renter in and put it on Zillow, we listed this property out for $3,500 per month. Now, the very first day we listed this property up, it was pretty much rented out. So I kind of thought we rented this property a little bit too cheap from the start, but I was okay with that. It seemed like we had some really solid tenants that were gonna absolutely love the property and take care of it. The plan was to turn it into an Airbnb, but we actually had an amazing couple who wanted to rent this house out long term. So we signed the lease thinking everything was gonna be great, and just a few weeks in, that's when we started having some problems with these tenants. It was clear that these are disaster tenants and they do this to tons of different landlords, because originally when they rented this out, I had a landlord who was a real estate agent reach out to me, and he was the one who this couple was renting from and basically vouched for them moving into my place, saying that they were good tenants. And just a few weeks in, I was getting texts about random stuff being broken, which I absolutely knew was not the case because we had it thoroughly checked. And I actually lived there for about a year before I did end up renting this property out. So I knew what they were saying didn't really make sense, especially when I did have tons of handymen coming in there looking at their issues and realizing that what they're saying isn't really valid. Now, this was just the start to all the problems, and these tenants ended up being one of the biggest Karens that I've ever had to deal with. So just basically constant communication with these people, and I made a giant mistake not getting a property manager for this property. I assumed that, hey, it's one property, let me get up close and personal and see how this process works, because I do want to invest more into real estate. But after going through this experience, I will definitely use a property manager on all my future encounters, because these tenants ended up just berating us with random nonsense and eventually asked us if they could get out of their lease for absolutely no reason. And at this point, I was so fed up with them that I just let them get out. But luckily we were able to keep their security deposit. Now, honestly, this was a pretty stressful moment because I already moved across the world. I currently live in Puerto Rico, and I actually just bought this piece of real estate that I'm at, which I'll talk about soon. But I was not at this property in Tucson, and I had no way to really rent this out. So what I had to do is find a tenant to move in pretty much the next day after this couple left. And somehow it ended up working itself out, and we got a new couple inside of this property. And the good news about this whole story and this whole drama is that we're actually able to bump our rent up a little bit at this point, because rent was continually increasing. So we decided to rent this up for $37.50 a month, and near immediately it was booked out. So those are some of the headaches with this property, but I definitely want to talk about the expenses and the cash flow, because like I said, my mortgage is $1,900 and my rent's $37.50, but there definitely is a lot of expenses that I didn't really anticipate when I got into this. So let me talk about that. So besides having a mortgage and all the costs associated to that, including insurance, we're also paying landscaping and pool service on this property, because I do want to take very good care of this house and I don't want to run a slum house. So I want to make sure that we have active protocols in place where we make sure that these tenants don't screw the house up. So that cost me about another $300 per month. Another expense associated to this is a 4% fee, which I paid a real estate agent to facilitate this contract, which ends up being about another $150 per month. And then on top of that, we've had tons of different maintenance calls and we've had to fix quite a bit of stuff. So in the last 12 months, we spent about $3,000 on stuff that needed to get fixed, which adds another $250 a month in expenses. Now, I'm gonna have my editor do the math and you'll be able to see the cash flow that we're profiting every single month on this property. So it's still definitely dramatic. And I think it's a good cash flow considering that we only invested about $18,000 in this. This is definitely my favorite part of the house. I would use this the entire time I was living here, and I think it gives a lot of value for any renters who actually want to rent this out. But one thing that I do want you to consider is that when you are starting to scale your real estate portfolio, putting 5% down doesn't work. So when you're buying investment properties, you're putting 25% down. So I don't know how I would feel with these numbers if I would have invested 25% down. The return just really wouldn't be that phenomenal for how much money I invested into it. So I think real estate investing can be very good, but I think it's really about having capital and being able to reallocate that capital at a proper time. Because for example, right now the market is very high. So one idea that I could do is I could sell the property that I have for $530,000. And since I only put $18,000 into it, I'm gonna pull out almost $200,000. Now, if I put that $200,000 onto a new property at 20% down, I would have purchasing power of $1 million, and I would be able to rent $1 million of real estate out, which would technically get me a better return. So I think this is a really great strategy that you can use and implement for long-term income. But obviously the market isn't going to continue to just go sky high. We're at a very interesting period in time for real estate as we see interest rates are shooting up. to new levels that we haven't seen in a few years. Like, I contacted my loan officer a few days ago and he mentioned that rates are in the 6%. And I think we're gonna see that climb more and more, which is gonna continue to price home buyers out. Because one thing that I do want you guys to consider is that in the last year, home affordability has been increased by over 40%, which means that same $400,000 house in 2020 now costs you 40% more monthly to manage the mortgage, because that $400,000 home increased in property value, and also mortgage rates have went up dramatically, which is causing kind of a new shift in the market.
Years of demise and slow growth following the 2008 recession, real estate is back in the headlines. The median home price today...
But we're still seeing way more home buyers than home sellers, so it's a very unbalanced market right now, and I think this is going to be interesting to see where the market goes. I'm going to continue to invest in real estate, but I'm going to definitely be safe in it, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video, kind of just going over everything that happened in the last year with this property. If you guys want me to go over this property that I'm living at right now and talk about my insane experience buying this property and earning almost $150,000 equity immediately, then let me know down in the comments and I'll make a video about it very soon. Take care and peace out.